Hello everyone and welcome back to my Warhammer 40k guides. I am Brady and it's time again for another top 10 armies video. This time it's the top 10 armies of March 2019. For those of you who are new around here and don't know how I construct these lists, I take the top 5 placings from all GTs and majors that were featured on the Best Coast Pairings app for a certain month. So in this case it's the month of March. And the armies that have the most top 5 placings get a higher spot on the list. And if multiple armies are tied in the amount of placings that they received, then the actual placings themselves are the tiebreaker. Also, because of the way 8th edition works and how most competitive lists are made, I determine the main faction of each army by seeing which faction had the most points spent on it. So for example, if you have an Imperium list with 1500 points of Dark Angels and 500 points of Astra Militarum, then I consider that to be a Dark Angels army with Guard allies. Well anyways, but now with all of that exposition out of the way, let's get into the top 10 armies of March. Number 10, Blood Angels. In the month of March, Blood Angels had 2 top 5 placings with a 3rd and 5th place finish. Both of the lists were pretty different from each other too. The first list is actually something I wouldn't really expect to see at a top table, but here we are. It's not only a pure Blood Angels list, but it's also pretty much a pure Primaris list as well, except for one Smash Captain. The list is also very shooting heavy, with the Smash Captain being the only exception. This is the first list I've seen at a top event using repulsors, and probably the second I've ever seen using Redemptor Dreads. To be fair, this list does pack a decent amount of firepower and it's pretty mobile, so maybe I need to start giving repulsors more credit than I used to. The second list is a more traditional Blood Angels list that we are used to. This list features Lamarties, a Librarian with Jump Pack, a Librarian Dreadnought, a 10-man Intercessor squad, 2 Scout squads, and a 15-man Death Company squad with 3 Thunderhammers, and the rest with bolt guns and chainswords. The Guard Battalion is also a Vigilist formation, being the artillery formation, and it includes 2 company commanders, 3 infantry squads, a Master of Ordnance, 1 Wyvern, and 2 Basilisks. And then to finish off the list there is a Knight Crusader. So to give some insight on the list, the Guard Battalion is pretty straightforward. It's just a loyal 32 plus some artillery, so it gives some easy command points to your army, but also some anti-infantry and anti-tank between the Wyvern and the Basilisks. It also gives you a bit of utility with the stratagem that can have an enemy infantry unit's movement for that turn, which can come in pretty clutch. The Crusader is pretty straightforward for the most part as well. It comes with some good guns and is a cheaper option when it comes to points and stratagems when compared to the Knight Castellan, so you don't need to bring a Guard Brigade to fund it essentially, since Rotate Ion Shields is only 1 command points for this guy. And it's also slightly better in close combat than a Castellan as well, so you can run it up the field and actually kick stuff in the face with its feet. As for the Blood Angel stuff, I assume the Librarian and Librarian Dreadnought run up the field behind the troops for protection through the character keyword, and the Librarian Dread eventually casting Wings of Sanguinius on himself to literally fly into battle. And the Death Company and Lamarties deep strike either together on turn 2 or 3 to ensure the Death Company actually make their charge with the bonus from Lamarties, or they can come in one at a time depending on what you need at the time. Or you can have Lamarties running up the board alongside your other characters behind your screen, and you can start the Death Company on the board and deep strike them turn 1 with the Descent of Angels and Upon Wings of Fire stratagems. And to be honest, that's not necessarily a bad option, especially if you can hide them in case you don't get turn 1, because these guys can chew through a ton of screening units to make way for things like your Librarian Dreadnought and the Knight to get into combat with the bigger things that were hiding behind the screen. Overall though, I'm happy to see the Sons of Sanguinius back on this top 10 list again. If I remember correctly, it's actually been over a year since they've been on the actual top 10 list instead of just being an honorable mention. Number 9, Craft Worlds. This month, the generic Space Elves come in at number 9 with a 3rd, 4th, and 5th place finish during the month of March. So the first list features a battalion of Elatok and a battalion of Inari. In the Elatok detachment, we have pretty much staples of a Farseer and a couple of Warlocks, followed up by some Dire Avengers and 4 Wave Serpents. Then in the Inari detachment, we have an Autarch Skyrunner, Ivrain, a blob of Guardian Defenders, 2 units of Storm Guardians, and a unit of 9 Dark Reapers. So to try to summarize what this army does very quickly, since we do have a lot to go over in this video, because there were a ton of events in the month of March. Everything except the Autarch and the blob of Guardians goes inside the Wave Serpents, and the blob of Guardians I assume goes into a Deep Strike. That's what I would do with them anyways, and you can do this with a stratagem. On turn 1, you hop out the Dark Reapers and super buff them with all your spells and allow them to shoot twice with the spell Word of the Phoenix, and everything else just kinda does its own thing. Then on turn 2, you can deep strike in your Guardians and either super buff them, or you can just super buff the Reapers again, depending on what you need at the time. The second list features a Spearheaded Drukhari, an Airwing detachment of Craft Worlds, and a battalion of Craft Worlds. The Drukhari Spearhead is Blackheart, of course, for the access to Agents of Ect, and also Feel No Pain saves on all the vehicles, and it includes an Archon with the relic Rid of the Living Muse, which gives rerolls of 1 to wound for Blackheart units within 6 inches of the Archon. It also includes 3 Ravagers with Dizzy Cannons, and 2 Razorwing Jet Fighters with Dizzy Cannons. The Airwing and Craft World is a lay talk for that extra -1 to hit, making these flyers -2 to hit because of the trait combined with the hard to hit rule. And the Craft World Battalion is again a lay talk and features a Farseer Skyrunner, a Warlock Skyrunner, 3 squads of Rangers, and a unit of 9 Wind Riders. So to quickly summarize this list, the Dark Eldar stuff all surrounds the Archon to get rerolls of 1s to hit and 1s to wound because of the relic, which makes them very efficient with all those dizzy cannons. Since they're hitting on 3s anyways, they'll get to reroll their 1s to hit, and their normal targets they're shooting at are usually toughness 4 or 3, so they're wounding on 3s usually and rerolling 1s to wound, so they're very efficient. Also, depending on what you need, you could put the flyers around them too to be able to get the same rerolls for their dizzy cannons as well, although in some instances you want your flyers flying off to either like move block or to grab recon or other things. It really just depends on the game. The Eldar flyers move block enemies or just shoot stuff from far away and enjoy their -2 to hit while the opponent cries. And the Warlock and Farseer have my favorite combo in the game of Doom plus Jinx, which when cast on enemy units might as well just read, "That unit will die this turn." I even use this combo in my own Drukhari list, and I can say that it's honestly an amazing combo. It helps you kill almost anything you want in one turn as long as the spells go off and you have a list that is built to be able to shoot everything at that one unit. And with the Stratagem Seer Council, a command reroll, and the rerolls the Farseer gets, it normally goes off unless you're really unlucky. Then the Rangers just kind of sit on backfield objectives while providing a bit of supporting fire, and the Wind Riders zoom around the board either grabbing objectives or unloading on infantry. And the third list is a battalion of Craft Worlds, an Air Wing of Craft Worlds, and an Air Wing of Drukhari. So pretty much flyer spam like we saw from the second place list at the last LVO. I'm not going to go in depth with this list because I pretty much explained everything this list has to offer when I went over the last 2 lists, so you should get the picture from that. It's a pretty good list though, and hard for a lot of armies to deal with. Number 8, Mech. The Cogboys come in at number 8 this month with a 1st place, 3rd place, and 5th place finish. The first list is pretty unique from things we've seen before out of top Mech lists, and this list actually features some Cataphren destroyers. It also features 3 Ravenwing Dark Talons, which used to be very popular early on in 8th edition, until they got a points increase plus the changes on how flyers work, but they are still pretty good. And then other than some basic troops, we have the tried and true Dragoons that are -2 to hit when they are Stygies, and they can move up the board before the game begins with the Stygies trait. The second list is pretty much the exact same list as the AdMech list from the last LVO. In fact, I believe it's the same player that actually piloted it. It features a Castellan, a battalion of Stygies AdMech, and a battalion of Acadian Guard. If you want an in-depth explanation of this list, then check out my video featuring the top 8 lists from the LVO. And the third list actually really surprised me, as it's not a Stygies list this time around, and it's actually Mars and features Call himself. So we have an Astra Military battalion, which nobody cares about, so let's talk about the AdMech stuff. So they use some Cataphren Breachers, Call, some Destroyers, and some Castellan robots, which, to be honest, I still don't really think are all that great. Sure, they do a lot of damage with Call, like with the rerolls and everything, but depending on the board, it's really easy to outmaneuver them and just avoid their shots. Maybe this tournament didn't have a lot of line of sight blocking terrain or something, but yeah, either way, this player still made it work, so kudos to them. Overall, I'm happy the Cogboys are now starting to consistently hit top 10s. There was a long period of time where they weren't even used, but like I predicted in my review of the last chapter approved video, they did get a bunch of points decreases and people have started picking them up and they're doing well now. So I'm happy. Number 7, Chaos Demons. During the month of March, Chaos Demons had 2 first place finishes and a 4th place finish, with one of those being first place at the recent Adepticon. Also, the same guy, Jim Vessel, was the other first place at another event as well with the same list. So I'm only going to show his list once because that makes the most sense. So there's 2 lists to show technically. So his list featured a battalion of Nurgle Demons, a mixed detachment of Chaos Demons, and a Supreme Command of Thousand Suns. The thing that sticks out to me the most in this list is the Contemptor Dreadnought with C-beam cannons. Other than that, most of this stuff looks like stuff we've been seeing at a Chaos Demon and Thousand Suns list. The Plaguebearers screen for the characters and are a great screen because they can become -2 to hit with a 4-up invul and a 5-up feel no pain, so they're pretty hard to get through. And they lead the characters who will eventually get into close combat, start tearing stuff up, while smiting stuff and doing other mortal wound spells while getting up the board. The Bloodletters and the Pink Horrors deep strike and do some damage that way. And the Brimstones and the Nurglings probably just sit on backfield objectives. I actually already did an interview with Jim Vessel and I have that video online right now if you want to check that out, so I'll have a link for it in the description. He goes over like why he picked the Dreadnought and other specific things about his list that I found very interesting, so hopefully you guys find it interesting too. And the other demons list is a pure Chaos Demons list and even has some reserve points for summoning in more demons. This list also features Bellicor, which we haven't really seen on top tables in a very long time. To be honest, still not entirely sure how these people keep making these summoning lists work, but kudos to them. Number 6, Drukhari. The Dark Eldar make a return to the top 10 this month with a first place, second place, and 2 fourth place finishes during the month of March. So the first list is a battalion of Cabal of the Blackheart, a battalion of Red Grief Witches, and an auxiliary support detachment with a Farseer Skyrunner. This list uses the combo of the Archon with the Writ of the Living Muse combined with the Ravagers and the Flyers to make them all efficient in their shooting. The Witches try to tie stuff up or hold them in combat, or just act as a nuisance to the enemy. And the list actually uses some Reaver jet bikes, which we haven't really seen much on top tables. And then of course the Farseer bringing Doom to the table, which is one of the best spells in the game, in my opinion. The next list is mainly a Coven based army, but also brings in a Cabal with the Writ of the Living Muse combo with Ravagers as well. Personally, I've never really liked Coven units as they don't really fit my preferred playstyle with the army, but they are still very good options. Grotesques are kinda stupidly durable, almost like Drukhari's version of Bulgrin, and Talos seem to chew through a ton of things, being decent at both killing infantry and vehicles. The third list is another Coven list, featuring more Rax and Talos, the Writ of the Living Muse combo with Ravagers and Razorwing Jet Fighters, and including a Supreme Command of a Farseer Skyrunner, an Autarch Skyrunner, and a Warlock Skyrunner. So this list makes use of the Doom plus Jinx combo instead of opting for more Talos or Grotesques or units like that. Personally, I like this list better than the last one, but that's just based on my own preferences and playstyle. And the final list for Drukhari is incredibly close to a list I came up with months ago and was surprised no one has been using since it's really good in my opinion. I would even go as far to say that I think it's the most optimal Drukhari list out there. But again, that's just my opinion and I'm biased because, well, I came up with it. Anyways, the list features a battalion of Obsidian Rose, a Spearhead of Blackheart, and a battalion of Alatok. In the battalion of Obsidian Rose, you have some Archons with blasters and 4 units of Cabalates with blasters. And because they are Obsidian Rose, their blasters are now 24-inch range and their splinter guns are 30-inch range, which means rapid fire at 15 inches. And this synergizes really well with the Venoms because the Venoms have a 36-inch range with their double splinter cannons, which there are Venoms in the list, they're in the other detachment, and they rapid fire at 18 inches. So having that 15-inch rapid fire means it's closer to the 18 inches, so you really only have to be about 16 inches away to get the rapid fire. Reason being is because when the infantry shoot out of a Venom, they shoot from any point of the model, so you can actually measure from the front tip of the Venom, which gives you like an extra 1.5 inches. So you get to be farther away from the enemy while shooting, which means you're safer on the enemy turn because it's less likely you're going to get charged by stuff, especially if you're killing the stuff that's closest. And then, like I mentioned, there's a Spearhead of Blackheart, which is the Archon with the Writ of the Living Muse, 3 Disintegrator Ravagers, 2 Disintegrator Jet Fighters, and 4 Venoms with double splinter cannons, which the Obsidian Rose infantry occupy. Which, by the way, you can do this. Venoms can transport friendly Drukhari. It does not say friendly Cabal or friendly Cult. It does say friendly Drukhari. So you can mix and match and put different Cabals inside different Venoms. And then to end off the list, there's a battalion of a Farseer and Warlock Skyrunners, 3 units of Rangers, and a Hemlock Wraithfighter. This list is super mobile and has a decent range with the Obsidian Rose trait on the blasters, and synergizes really well with the rapid firing Venoms. And the Doom and Jinx combo synergize really well with the blasters or the poison weapons, depending on what you need to kill. So again, personally, I feel like this type of list is the most optimal Drukhari build out there, which is why I'm surprised more people haven't been playing it. So kudos to this player who also discovered this type of combo, and because honestly, it is a really good list. Overall, I'm happy Drukhari is back on the top 10 again this month, and I'm happy to see that someone else has discovered the power of Obsidian Rose infantry inside Blackheart Venoms. Number 5, Jeanstealer Cults. Like I said in my previous videos, it was only a matter of time before people discovered the power of this army, and it seems that time has come. Jeanstealer Cult have 4 placings during the month of March, with 2 second place finishes, a 3rd place finish, and a 4th place finish. So this video is running a little long, so I'm not going to go over every list like I've done previously, and instead I'm just going to summarize everything. So to start, max squads of fearless Brood Brother infantry getting orders from allied company commanders is pretty nuts. Acolytes with hand flamers deep striking in and moving with the stratagem to get in range is also pretty nuts, and delete stuffs. And aberrants deep striking and moving closer with their hammers delete stuff as well. And aberrants are especially strong against melee armies if you bring them in the anointed throng formation, because they can swing back as they die. Tyranids are decent allies as well for the Jeanstealer Cult, but personally I think I would just stick to Brood Brothers and Jeanstealer Cult, since I think the things that those armies can do with each other are pretty damn good overall, and in my opinion has the best synergy out of those 3 codexes. Number 4, Inari. Inari come in 4th this month with a 2nd, 4th, and 3 5th place finishes. All of these lists are actually pretty unique from each other, which makes me very happy, since at one point every Inari list was basically just copy and paste net lists, but it seems as though Inari players have been experimenting and finding new ways to run the army. The first list is pretty copy and paste though, so it kind of negates everything I just said, but they also include some Drukhari Coven units like Grotesques and Razorwing Jet Fighters. Another list has some Wind Riders in the Inari detachment instead of Shining Spears, and also some more Drukhari stuff. Sean Naden's Hero Hammer list also makes another appearance, which is basically just protecting his characters with chaff units like witches to allow them to get into combat and destroy some stuff. But just for you guys to note, in case you want to pick up Sean Naden's list, it is incredibly hard to pilot correctly, because kind of like the Thousand Suns characters list, if you step your characters too far forward and don't have a unit in between your character and the enemy shooting units, you will lose your characters, and once your characters start dying, you lose a lot of the power of your army. So it will take a lot of time and practice and a great understanding of the charge and fight phases in order to make an army like that work. And another one of the lists uses a lot of Cabalite stuff and a ton of Dark Reapers. Overall though, I'm happy to see Inari is evolving, even if it's only a tiny bit. With that said, it was confirmed that Inari is going to be receiving an update this month. So I'm curious to see what Games Workshop is going to do with them, and I'm happy Games Workshop finally has gotten around to changing Inari, because as you guys have known from the past, I don't really like Soul Burst and I kind of think it's an unfair mechanic, and I'm glad that they're going to be changing it, or at least I assume they're going to be changing it in this update, but we'll just have to wait and see. And now, before we get into the top 3 armies of March, here are some honorable mentions. These armies had top 5 placings at GTs and Majors during March, but didn't place enough to be able to make it onto the list itself. So we have Tau with a 1st place finish, Chaos Space Marines, which were Alpha Legion, with a 3rd place finish, Custodes with a 2nd place finish, Death Guard with a 3rd place finish, Thousand Suns with a 3rd place finish, and Space Marines, which were Ultramarines, as a 4th place finish. And with the honorable mentions out of the way, but before we get into the top 3 armies of March, this video was brought to you by the channel's Patreon. So if you'd like to help support the channel monetarily to allow me to continue making these Warhammer videos full time, you can do so for as little as $5 a month. And that $5 pledge gets you exclusive access to the Almost Pro Gaming Discord server, where I can help you with your lists, or you can chat with myself or other patrons about the game. We have chat rooms for hobby stuff, list building stuff, memes, useful links like the FAQs and such, announcements about the game to stay up to date with the game, and much more. There are also other pledge options that include rewards like custom list building from myself, where I will make you a list based off of your own wants from the game, or even voice chat sessions with myself, where we can talk about the game and I can give you some tips and advice in areas you may need help. It's a great way for new players to learn about the game, or for veterans to get some different perspectives on the game. So if you'd like to make a pledge on Patreon to help out the channel, or to receive any of these rewards, you can do so at patreon.com/almostprogaming. And if you can't afford to support the channel by making a pledge, I still appreciate the fact that you watch my videos, share my videos, and like my videos. So thank you all for that, I really do appreciate it. So now with that shameless self-promotion out of the way, let's get into the top 3 armies of March. Number 3, Astra Militarum. The Guard have finally been dethroned, but to be fair, they are still in the top 3, so it's not much of a fall from grace. They had 5 top 5 placings, including a 1st place, 2 2nd places, a 3rd place, and a 5th place placing during March. So the first list is a Castellan Brigade list with a couple of changes, mainly more Rough Riders instead of Hellhounds, and they brought a battalion as well for even more command points to feed to the Castellan, and that battalion was the artillery formation with a couple of Wyverns. The second list is actually a battalion Acadians, which is pretty much just a Loyal 32 and a super heavy detachment with 2 Banehammers and a Machinaeus Vulcan? I think I said that right. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments. The next list has some Blood Angel allies mixed in, featuring another Librarian Dreadnought and some Vanguard vets with jump packs, Storm Shields, Chainswords, and Thunderhammers. A Brigade of Guard and a super heavy auxiliary detachment featuring the Master of the Imperium, Gilliman himself. And the final list I have to talk about features yet another Catachan Guard Brigade, a battalion of Blood Angels with Scouts, and a couple of Smash Captains, and a super heavy auxiliary detachment with some Grey Knights? Interesting. Anyways, there were 2 Grandmaster Nemesis Dread Knights and Grandmaster Voldus in the detachment. Basically the only good units the Codex has to offer, other than maybe Drago. Number 2, Orcs. The Greenskins come in at number 2 this month with a 1st place, 2 2nd place, a 3rd place, and a 4th place finish. The lists, for the most part, all include a ton of boys, which are definitely a staple in Orcs in my opinion, some support for the boys, and then after that, it's basically just a choose your own toppings type of army, where after you have that core, you can do whatever you want. One of the lists has Dakajets, another list has Knobs with Flamers, another list has Mech Guns, another list has a couple of Gorkanauts. Basically, as long as you get that core down of 3 to 4 units of maxed out boys, supported by a big mech with a custom force field and some war bosses and weird boys, the rest of the list is up to you to do with as you please. For the most part, I don't think there really is an objectively bad unit in the Orc Codex, and everything can be used and have a purpose. So if you were wondering how to play Orcs, there's the secret, at least in my opinion. Stick to the core of 3 to 4 units of maxed out boys with support characters, and then do whatever you want. Very fitting for the Orcs, to be honest. Also, I am still on the Evil Sons hype train, but not all of these lists are Evil Sons. So even some of the other culters are getting some love, which is nice. Overall, I'm happy the Orcs are finally on top like I predicted them to be. It just took a minute for them to get there. Number 1. The best army in March goes to Imperial Knights. The Mechanical Titans of the Imperium had 2 first, 1 third, 1 fourth, and 1 fifth place finish during the month of March. I think we were all expecting it at some point. With how popular Knights have become, it was only a matter of time before they eventually got on top, just through numbers alone. Knights are probably the most popular faction in the meta right now, or at least I assume they are. At the last LVO, Knights took up 25% of all armies, which is kinda ridiculous when you think about it, because there's like 20 something armies in the game, but one army is taking up 25% of the playing field? That's nuts. A lot of armies also have a hard time dealing with 1 or even 2 Knights in a list, and these lists are bringing 3 or more of them. And with stuff like Jeanstealer Cults and Orcs becoming meta, everyone needed to make sure they brought enough anti-infantry to deal with those armies, which means that they might not have enough anti-tank to deal with the Knights. But to be fair, Knights kinda keep the meta in check, because if they weren't a meta army, then most armies could just get away with skimping on the anti-tank and just spamming a ton of anti-infantry. So personally, I feel like the Knights are in a good spot, except for maybe the Castellan. But even then, it seems like the Castellan has fallen out of favor, mainly because people are bringing a ton of Horde armies, and the Castellan doesn't really do all that much against Horde armies. Also, the reason the Castellan probably dropped in popularity is because people realize it's most likely going to get a kick in the teeth in the next big FAQ, so they'd rather practice without it for now and prepare for the future. That's just an assumption though. This is definitely just speculation, but it is something to consider. Overall, I assume we will see some changes to Knights in the upcoming FAQ, and if they are changed, I hope it doesn't kill them, because I actually enjoy Knight armies being meta, and I think it's a good thing for the game. Because again, it keeps other armies honest and having to bring anti-tank in order to deal with Knight armies if they go up against them. Otherwise, I feel like our meta will just go back to spamming as much anti-infantry as you possibly can. And that's going to be it for this video. Just wanted to say thanks to all my patrons. Without you guys and gals, the channel wouldn't be where it's at today. So honestly, I can't thank you all enough. Without you guys, I couldn't be making these videos full time. So again, thank you all very much. I love you all. With that said, I wanted to give some updates on stuff coming from the channel. I will be releasing a review of the new Chaos Codex soon, and Vigilus Formation soon. Also, after the next FAQ, I should be bringing you a new tier list, but I'm going to be doing the tier list a bit differently this time, and I think you will all enjoy the change that I make. Anyways, thanks again to all my patrons. Can't do it without you. Thanks again to all of you who watch my videos, and I will see you in the next one. Happy wargaming.